Welcome to Flat Earth Debate Live. I'm your host, Nathan Oakley, and if you are new to this channel, or you've not done so already, then be sure to subscribe, hit the bell notification icon, and join button if you'd like to become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member and keep up to date with the Flat Earth Debate. If you would like to support the channel, there is a super chat that runs alongside each of these shows while they are live, and there's also a PayPal, Patreon, crypto, and thanks button in the info box below the video. Most importantly, if you'd like to join the discussion, simply mute the page you are currently watching, then click the link in the info box below this video to join the panel and express your views on the nature of Earth. If you do join, please don't swear. If you do, you'll be ejected, and if you are, please don't try to rejoin the stream using sock accounts. You'll be warmly welcome back on the next stream. Please also share the show on social media. Sharing the show obviously increases the live audience, but this in turn increases the chances of a more diverse panel, so please share the show on Facebook and X. Now we are joined by 10th Man, Neil, Original D-Rose, Righteous Force, Brian's Logic, and a whole bunch of people in Discord. So welcome one and all.
Good morning, good morning.
Hello.
Hey, good afternoon.
Hello, it's good to have you all. Welcome. We do have a video queued up, which means we can swiftly dispense with housekeeping, as we did a full rendition of it on the end of last week's show, so Friday of last week. But anyway, let's start with any evidence of the distance to the sun.
How would they know that?
Well,
To even
what they did,
Well, you could just take an angle to it and, extrapolate out the height based on trig. No?
Where is the Lamborghini?
Yeah, there's that Lamborghini.
what
You're going to need a flat Earth
You're
for
going
that,
to need
yeah.
a flat Earth for that.
Yeah, beyond that, who cares? I mean, all the rest of it is just nonsense. I got a bit annoyed yesterday whilst listening back to one of the after shows to the chat commenters. One of them, I think it's called Evie or something. And you get to the point where they accept that there's a container required in order to achieve gas pressure. And they start asking you a question about, what if the container's out at Mars and, the gas is just produced within that area? It's like, get lost. At the point that you understand that containment's required, I couldn't give a crap about your, difficulties and mental cognition problems. Oh, right, you now need to fathom what the container is. That's fascinating. A container's required, your heliocentric model's ruined, because the space is from sea level out to everywhere. That's the space. So there is no container in the heliocentric model. So your speculations are irritating.
What?
Go ahead.
Wait a minute. So if, let's just go with the silliness, since they admit there's a container up until Mars, then you can't go past Mars, but they're telling us they're going past Mars with their probes. So yeah, that's done.
Well, it's just it's a reorientation of the original heliocentric faith to try and incorporate this anomaly that defies their belief. So they incorporate some ad hoc explanation within their current heliocentric rhetoric, and that just annoys me. It's like, I don't give a crap about your need to retain your heliocentric faith beyond its debunking. If you need to recomprehend something that is laid down with a foundational non-contained system as being contained in your estimation, and then, again, in this particular instance, it's like, I'm just asking questions. Like, no, you're not.
Mm-hmm.
You're speculating to retain your heliocentric faith. Now, at the point that you're saying, yeah, okay, what about where the container will need to be? We'll need to know that. No, you need to know that now that you realise you need one. Me, I don't care. You suddenly need to know where it is because you're programmed to ask the next question, well, where is the dome? All right, well, we need containment to be breathing. Your heliocentric model is debunked. Beyond that, I don't care what you need to fathom. It's not of concern to me. But any evidence you can have gas pressure without a container?
No, no evidence, and that's why it's still my favorite of all time.
well,
You
I could
have
ask you what the
pressures.
dome is as a.
Come on, Brian.
I could ask you where is the dome as a kind of a burden of reversal.
It is a
Sorry,
burden of proof reversal.
a reversal of the burden of proof, because that's what is happening.
Yeah,
As soon
exactly.
as, that's what happened in your chat. I couldn't get in there. That's what happened in your chat, obviously, or in the comment section. There was like, so tell us all about this container, you know what I mean, that's out by Mars, or about this. It's like you're supposed to come up with some explanation for a container that might be at Mars in there, you know what I mean? It's nothing to do with you.
Or an alternative, they ask you for an explanation why it hasn't all equalised. You're like, who cares? Now, you could just discern.
They don't understand
You could just, you could go into dynamic systems and explaining stuff that they've been educated at high school level with, i.e., the water cycle, by way of example. But why? By the point you understand as an opponent that you need containment, asking me how the containment works or why it hasn't done something is entirely irrelevant. You, with a heliocentric faith, have a containerless system that's not dispersing into the area it has available to it. Once you show that the gas would not exist anymore, that's it. That's the end of the heliocentric positive claim. How the container works, I don't care. Why are you asking me? Well, because you've said that there must be one. No, I've said we need containment for gas pressure, and we definitely have gas pressure. Now, what the containment is, I don't know. But I'm not claiming that something beyond the containment we can travel to, that are the lights in the sky called Mars and Venus and all these other crappy planets that they say we could effectively travel to. That's a positive claim that we've debunked. I don't have to prove what the containment is. It's not for me to do.
I like the way you ran away from the distance to the sun question. Sorry.
Well, we went from that to gas pressure without a container.
Yeah.
But go ahead.
I want to say it's something like a speculation, but I mean, the science of low energies like superconductivities, quantum locking, these phenomena are very well known in physics, the science of physics, and gases do have a different kind of behavior. Like if you have extreme low temperatures high above in the sky, there could be some sort of magnetic flux or quantum locking phenomena, which doesn't allow the air to go further than that into that medium, because it's a very low energy medium.
Hold on, you've gone from hold on. No, stop.
No.
Hold on. You've gone from a speculation about what it could be, which I can go along and nod along and go, yeah, maybe, and then we can move on to because it is, it won't. Do you see how you went from a speculation to an insertion of it being that way? Do you see how maybe it's a language thing? I don't want to be too harsh.
Correct. Yeah. I never say this is what it is because I have to prove. So I was saying it's like a speculation.
No, fine. It's a language thing. You did the way you phrased it was such, but that's fine. My blood pressure will slowly go back to normal as I shout out John Birch for a super chat. He says, "No, oh, I see. It's a Lamborghini sound. You're gonna need a flat Earth for that." Thank you for the super chat.
It gets colder up until 10 miles in the sky. Then it starts warming up again. So it starts to warm up after 10 miles, and it continues to warm up. So the only way it can warm up is that there's solid containment. That's the only way it can warm up. And the reason it's not expanding out into this extra area, there's several reasons. One of them is because, sorry?
Because there isn't one. If there was an area the size of the universe as described in heliocentrism.
No, the area within the containment is what I'm saying. You know, for the reason my point being is that the reason it's not expanding up past the 10-mile point up into this warmer area, the reason it's not doing that is because not only is it being held back a little bit by the warmer point, but there's gas cycles. So 99% of our air is nitrogen and oxygen, and they are constantly recycling with the surface of the Earth. It's a constant.
True, but
that's
why
part of the reason.
Why are you detailing this? So,
well, that man there was asking about it, so I was just pointing out. I'm not going to go into all of it.
I'm not decrying it. I'm just pointing out for the audience's benefit, regardless of how well qualified the question was or how well answered it was by you, Brian. Just point out to the audience, we don't have to do this. You need to know as a flat earther where to draw the line and then choose whether or not you explain things. The question you ask first, again, this is not of detriment to you, Brian, because I want that information to come across. I would pepper it in with a disclaimer that I don't need to be explaining this water cycle. You know what I mean? So that there's a clear understanding that I'm not going to expand on it further if I don't want to, because I don't need to. In other words, what an opponent will do in the scenario of debate where you ask them to prove gas pressure can exist without containment, a la their heliocentric model, and then you get to half an hour later them conceding you must have containment to have gas pressure in the first instance. Then they start asking you a question about, let's think of an example that Brian just gave, the increase in temperature as you raise in elevation after a decrease in temperature. And they ask you, how do you explain that within your dome? Right? Because they're going to straw man you. And at that point, Brian's explanation stands and is correct. However, why are you giving it is where I step in, and I'm not decrying his explanation. You need to know this stuff in case you're forced into a corner by whatever means people are tricky. But you don't have to answer it. And if you do, preface it with, I don't need to explain why that happens, it just does. If you can prove it does happen, it doesn't have any bearing on the sky vacuum being debunked. And that's the only, this is the point, positive claim on the table. You claim the sky is a vacuum. I claim, what about the sky? Nothing beyond what we can demonstrate to be the case in terms of it increasing in temperature in this instance. I'm not making any claims about what causes that or why that might be. I just know we need containment for gas pressure, debunking your sky vacuum positive claim I ain't making. So don't hold me to task on anything in this scenario, because I've not got anything to be held to task on. That's my point, and I'm going to illuminate that for the audience in spite of a really good explanation. It's like any of these shortcuts that we go through with refracted curvatures examples that have a nice Lamborghini attached to them. You still need to know all of the fluff that goes before it and after it. It's only when you know all of that fluff that you can cut arguments off at the knees and direct them to the fact it needs a flat earth. If you don't understand the wrangle-dangle like Brian's just given in this example about how things actually do function, you'll be caught out as ignorant immediately. But knowing it and knowing that you don't want to argue it is the best possible position to be in, so that if you happen to be forced into a corner, you can give a very quick and off-the-cuff rendition that just demonstrates immediately you do understand this stuff. But you don't have to argue it, and you're going to make that point when reiterating that the sky vacuum's fake. We haven't got an outer space. That's the bit that I want to have the audience understand, but simultaneously, I want Brian to actually not feel like he's put out now and he wouldn't in future go through that explanation, because it's still absolutely needed for you to do well in these discussions. So, yeah, there's a long road to get to these cutting off people at the knees, Lamborghinis going past by analogy. You're going to need a flat earth for that. But you still need to walk the path. You cannot just jump over the metaphorical river. You've got to actually wade through it and see all the crap that's in it, get to the other side dry, and then from the other side be able to shout across without wading through it again. You're going to need a flat earth for that. But if you've just jumped over the river and somebody catches you on the other side, metaphorically speaking, and you don't have a clue about how elevation angles actually work, and you just start barking off that you're going to need a flat plane for that, you're going to fail quickly. Anyway.
Yeah, that used to drive me crazy. Hold on. That used to drive me
Neil.
crazy.
Just let Brian reply. It was me. I was talking. He was being talked about.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, Nathan is right, because in fairness, I've looked into this in depth as much as a normal person, got as much information as a normal everyday person could get on the subject of what's happening from the ground up into the sky, right? So I can go into that, and if someone wants to argue with me, I have the detail there to cause them a problem. But for most other people, there's no point in going into that if you don't understand it fully. Because what I gave even there a few minutes ago is only a tiny fraction of it. You don't need to do all that. Like, I can, if a baller says to me, well, what's creating the extra heat? I can, even though I can show with physics what will create that extra heat, right? I don't have to. I could say, I don't know, you tell me. And I know what they're going to come at. I'm not going to say now. I know what they're going to say, and I'll take that apart. So I don't have to do it. So in fairness, there's no need to go into all that. It's good to know it. It's good to learn it. But you don't have to do it as far as an argument goes. It's like you're not making a claim. You're just pointing out, well, according to official sources, this, and this is the case.
Yeah.
And
Neil,
you know what I mean?
Neil, then Adam. Neil, go ahead.
That's the saviour.
Oh, okay. Well, hold on. Just let Neil, then you, Adam.
No, I was just saying that used to drive me crazy when you wouldn't give them an answer. And I realized, they're agreeing that we need containment. We don't need an answer. We all agree containment's needed.
98 people watching. Go ahead, Adam.
Right, yeah. I'm cringing with stuff like this. I'm not saying Brian's wrong. I wouldn't go anywhere near it because all of this information it's not really verifiable. The zones aren't verifiable. It's all kind of based in a heliocentric model. Yeah, I don't know if it's like that high up. I genuinely don't know. I know it's described in a heliocentric paradigm like that. And I would be very, very wary of engaging in any argument that Brian's happy to go into because he is going to recite their facts. But they're their facts for me. I wouldn't draw anything other than the simple bit, as Neil says, it requires containment. Yeah. As for the rest of it, trying to I don't mind using the Zachary Zabala when we set up the differential pressures within one contained system. We can generate those. We can do those things all with the point of demonstrating that we need containment. As soon as it's heading anywhere near explaining anything, be that flat or ball, I'd stay well out of any form of claim there and just keep it with the necessary antecedent, which is the containment. The rest of it, I just think there's too much unknowns.
And
I wouldn't profess I know how the atmosphere works.
A good example with another rebuttal that they offer in terms of the Delta X argument, right? So you've just exampled Zachary Zabala where he heated up and cooled one and other end of a contained system and showed with two gauges, what the difference in pressure was. So my argument would be same as to Brian. Why are you doing that? Well, we're showing that you can achieve a gas pressure differential in a container. Yeah, but why? What have you got as a positive claim in order to need to demonstrate that? Oh, well, that we need containment. Yeah. Sorry, no, that's not a positive claim, right? That's an antecedent consequent relationship. You can't ever achieve gas pressure without containment. So that's a given. You don't need to demonstrate anything. What's that? But they say we could have a pressure differential, therefore Earth's not flat, or whatever garbage they've offered it for. No. The Delta X argument is an argument that argues for pre-existing gas pressure without discussing what contained it to achieve it, and then argues about whether or not you can achieve a delta of that pre-existing gas pressure in a gradiated form. No. Point out that in order to achieve any gas pressure at all, ever, you first require containment. Now, because that's, as I said earlier, a given, it is down to them, the positive claimant, that you can achieve gas pressure without containment to damn well show it. And if they can't, beyond their, of course, religious fundamentalist belief that the sky is automatically a vacuum, then you don't have to prove anything because you're not making a claim about what the sky is. And if you are, why are you?
Yeah,
the whole purpose of that rebuttal with Zach's, because we spent some time, there's a good guy called Adam who's the quality welder. And the purpose wasn't for us to prove anything. It was just to address what the anti-flat earthers were saying. Like we're saying you have to have containment, and they were claiming you couldn't have a gas pressure gradient within just a sealed unit. The gas pressure would equalize. So what we were trying to demonstrate there was that within a dynamic system, i.e. one end's in ice and the other end's getting heated up by a blowtorch, the laws of entropy will make the system dynamic, and because of entropy, create the concentration gradient, the pressure gradient within the closed system. So it was literally just to prove, to address the rebuttal, to claim that because it's concentrated, because it can't have
a little bit.
We just want to show that.
And I appreciate it. And let's put this on me. If I was a more skilled debater, I could get to the root I'm easily illustrating to the audience now before going to the appeal to their Delta X rebuttal. You just pop yourself on mute, Adam. You're causing a little bit of audio chaos. Can you hear me?
Well,
Hello?
that's right. I can't see any more.
I can hear you.
All
Yeah.
right, it's all right. I'll just pop him on mute myself. It's okay. So the Delta X rebuttal that they, as a baller, offer. So you ask, how can you have gas pressure without a container? They respond, well, you can't have gas pressure gradients. Okay. So then Adam steps in and says, well, I have offered up this explanation that you can demonstrate in physical reality by way of demonstration with a container with two pressure gauges and one end cooled, one end heated. Okay, fine. However, if I personally was a more skilled debater, as I recently did, I wouldn't need to appeal to that to bat away that rebuttal. In other words, when it came up most recently, I was like, oh, of course, we've got several demonstrations, Bottle Garden and Zachary Sabala with his bottle being heated, easily achieve differentials. That's not a rebuttal because Delta X, anyway, you've got to have containment. Now, had I have had more skilled in that skill set for debating in that moment, I could have just immediately refuted the fact that they're appealing to Delta X. Now, Quantum Eraser can do that and does do that. And I'm absolutely certain he understands implicitly that a pressure gradient could be achieved by way of physical demonstration that he could point out to the opponent. He just doesn't, Quantum Eraser, that is. He just goes, that's Delta X. Got to have gas pressure first before we start talking about gradients, and I'm not going to go there. Now, obviously, QE's far more proficient in understanding this stuff than I, and therefore doesn't need to appeal to the next thing along in the argument, the refutation or claim to be so from a baller when he says Delta X, gas pressure gradients. The most skilled debater goes, no, we're not going to argue about Delta X, and I'm not going to give you an example of how that's achievable, because it's just appealing to your rebuttal, so we can argue about that all day. Let's get back to the first prerequisite requirement, antecedent consequent relationship of gas pressure being achieved in the first instance. That needs containment. We will stick here indefinitely and never let them get to the rebuttal. Yes, for me, as a weaker debater, it's nice to bat it off quickly by saying, yeah, we've demonstrated it. You want the video link? But that just chews up time. Anyway, so shout out to Zachary Zabala in that regard. It is useful for me as a weaker debater to have that sort of thing in my arsenal. And if we hadn't got it, Bottle Garden would be my only example. And then show that it is at a differential gradiated pressure in the Bottle Garden. I don't know, someone's got to have a pressure gauge in it somewhere. And then suddenly you're into failing because you've appealed to the rebuttal. Now, not even knowing that you could achieve it. If Zach hadn't done that example, and I didn't know any other examples, I wouldn't need them if I was more skilled as a debater, because I would realise that the initial fallacy has been committed when they appeal to Delta X. You still need gas pressure to achieve gas pressure gradients. As long as you know that, you never need to get into that wrangle-dangle. Go ahead.
Yeah, what
Sorry,
people have to
Nathan.
understand
Biget, can you please mute yourself?
is,
Hold on, George.
what people have to understand is that when they say, this was their tactic all the time, when they said, can you prove that in a container, right, that there's a gradient can happen in a container, what they were trying to do was shoehorn in PV equals NRG, because that's what they're trying to shoehorn in. A force of gravity creates the pressure gradient. That's what they were trying to shoehorn in all the time. And when we took that away from them, then they wanted to attack the PV because NRT. They want to attack the ideal gas law. They want to try and change it around and come up with other scenarios where they could add in G, which is why I took that away with the objects weigh more in a vacuum. That completely takes that away. So you don't even have to go into whether or not a container is even needed. You just point out that what they need to be happening for their model to be in creation, the opposite happens. That's the end of that. So, but that's what their whole plan is, to shoehorn in G and remove the T and ignore the V in the PV equals NRT.
Right.
That's what their plan is.
That was the only thing I was going to add on. I'm glad you curtailed that with the substitution of V, because the volume for them is the entirety of their heliocentric space fantasy. Okay, that was an excellent roundup, Brian. We're going to cover, if Tent's still around, these two videos. The first one we're going to start with is by Deeds of Arms, a very small YouTuber, less than 100 people. Wow. Okay, and it's called Maritime Navigation, the Kamal. And as always, more so when it's a tiny little YouTuber, if anything, please let this videographer know. I'm going to put his link in the stream now. Paste. There we go. Let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me. And the same is true. This guy might suddenly make it massive. And even if he doesn't, might pick up a few subscribers if he were to do a response and thank us for sharing his video and getting the algorithmic love his way. He might put a link to my video and we might pick up a few subscribers off the back of his love in return. So please let him know with a kind comment that we've covered his video. It's only a short one, but this has been suggested by 10th Man. So 10th Man, after a brief hiatus, can you let us know why you picked this one? And then we'll go on to the next one and detail that after.
Yeah, this is more of an educational video.
Oh, sorry, Jorge, George was in the wings and I forgot all about him. Go on, George. I'm so sorry. Sorry, 10th.
No problem.
No, it's okay. I was just calling the attention. Big Cat is hot micing, and he rumpus you every now and again.
Sorry. I was willing to ask something, but when you have time, call me, shout me.
Go now. This is kind of the end of housekeeping,
Okay,
and we're about to transition into something completely new. So just be vigilant with your mute button, though. If you're not actually getting if you're not on
Yes,
the
I
mic,
will,
be on mute. Go ahead anyway. Get the mute.
Understood.
Go ahead.
So, it's a question and something like a proposal. I spoke with my father on things, and he told me about an experiment I wanted to do, and he told me like I should be searching some university where they have laboratories and where they can test these things. And I remember I saw a video documentary somewhere around 1995 between 2000, between these years. And it was a documentary on helium gas. It was very interesting. Now, the thing that I saw, I remember that they spoke about containers with gas, and they had precision gauges for measuring the pressure at the bottom and at the top of the container. And they showed how gases, oxygen or nitrogen or hydrogen, all these gases in a concentration of 99.9%, pure oxygen or pure nitrogen. And they all had a gradient, so at the bottom the gas pressure was higher, and at the top it was lower. Now the gradient is a very tiny amount, a very small difference, but the gradient is in every container where you have gas pressure. Now, what they showed, when you have a container and you put only helium gas inside, the higher pressure is at the top and the lower pressure at the bottom. And yeah, for this, you will need like precision gas pressure gauges so you can measure and test this. But if this experiment can be proposed to some university and give us like information, it will crush wildly this gravity, because if helium gas has a higher pressure at the top of the container, it doesn't explain, it contradicts everything about theory of gravity.
Okay, number one, this isn't an experiment. Number two, there's no need for us to do this. Number three, gravity was debunked as being a force of down 107 years ago by Einsteinian pseudo force-space-time bending. So there's no requirement to do any of that. I mean, I appreciate what you're saying, and it's useful information, and thank you for telling us. And it's interesting to hear.
Yeah,
but like before,
okay,
not necessary for us to disseminate that differential or greater pressure at the top of a container with helium, unless we're making a positive claim about it. And other than requiring containment for that example, the example's delta X. It's a delta of first achieving gas pressure in that containment to then demonstrate that there's a gradation in that containment. So once you get to the containment point, we don't need to do anything else.
Yeah.
Nathan.
This was the information that I saw in that documentary, but I don't remember. And it says that helium is like opposite of all other gases, you know. And why does it have a higher pressure at the top of the container instead of the bottom? You know, because all the gases normally they have high pressure at the bottom.
I understand your supposition, but it's a folly.
Yeah.
I mean, it's interesting to know, but it's a folly. Yeah. It may achieve useful technological advancements in containment or I don't know what, but for us, this really is a folly. Other than being interesting. Oh, that's fascinating that you get a higher pressure in a contained system of helium. Oh, that's really interesting. Yeah. But how does it help us?
Well, they can't explain it, you know, with their model. It contravenes their model a lot.
Sure, but as a proactive claim, other than as a refutation of their claim that there's a sky vacuum, at which point you don't need, this is my overall or overarching point of the day, that there is no necessity to move beyond the requirement for containment.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah,
okay,
I just wanted to propose it. Maybe someone with time and relations maybe can contact a university or laboratory, you know. It will be interesting, yeah.
Okay, I got it. Brilliant. Thank you for telling us. Okay.
Can I say something quick on that?
You can, but Ted's now in the wings for a bit, and we do want to get onto this video so we can at least start the ball rolling with it. It's only a short 2-minute video, but if you can keep it brief, Brian, go ahead.
I will do. Don't believe everything they showed you in that documentary. Sometimes they do things in a certain way to get the outcome they're looking to get. Right? All gases behave the same. It's all based around temperature. All gases, regardless of the type of gas, they will all behave the same. If you have 100% pure helium in a container, then there's no reason for it to have a higher pressure at the top unless there's more heat at the top. All gases behave the same.
All true.
So don't believe everything you see.
I gotcha. Yeah, and it's not an experiment. You know, this is a demonstration that may achieve an end for someone, but not us. So it's not an experiment. So yeah, who cares? Let's move on. 10th.
Yes, this first video is an educational video on the usage of the Kamal, the predecessor to the modern day sextant and all the other tools, instruments in between them, cross staff and all that kind of stuff. This guy does a very short, succinct description of angular measurements using the stars and how the ancients used to do it. So we can start with that.
During my time as an officer in King George's Navy around about the 1800s, I've collected quite a few navigational instruments. This is the Kamal, believed to be used in Arabia between the 6th and the 8th century. It measures latitude. This is the angle of the sun above the horizon. It's a very simple device. This is a piece of leather with something akin to a handle with a piece of string that you can tie knots. As a fisherman, you would want to head into open water, into bigger water, to find the bigger fish.
Of course you would. Just going to do a quick shout out to Godzilla. It says Raichi and Ranti sitting in a tree, Kissing. First came Fe and then the globe, then forevermore they lost their souls. How deep. Thank you for the super chat.
So you would head to the edge of your river. From there, you need to find a starting point to get you A, out into bigger water, and B, to get you home again. As with most latitude measurements, precise time is required. And as they didn't have watches or chronographs or anything like that in this day and age, we must assume that they somehow worked out roughly when to take this measurement.
Any further information on that? This is a bit of a problem, really. If you don't know how they're timing stuff. Bent, any excuses?
Yeah, they
12 noon,
obviously
12 noon.
when
Hold on, got two people talking. What's going on?
let him go. I'll go after him.
Whoever that was, go ahead.
I was just saying the reference 12 noon, the sun is its highest point.
No, well, I'm not saying they're not referencing solar noon. What they're doing is, from a heliocentric point of view, all their latitudes connect to the sun, right? But the path of the sun does not adhere to the rings of latitude. Rings of latitude are based off of Polaris, right? That's where they're derived from, not the sun. So what they have done is they have fooled people.
I'm sorry, Brian. I'm asking.
All right. This is prevalent, though.
It might be.
Yeah,
but that's not the question
Brian's
in
on.
regards
Let
to
him
what he's saying in
finish.
the video. I just need to establish. He's speculating about how they get accurate time. And he's like, well, I guess they might be doing... Who cares? If you haven't got accurate time, then what are your predictions worth?
Yeah, but he's working time off of longitude lines.
10th.
That's what he's working time off.
Okay.
No, Brian's got a point there. Obviously, he's as you watch the video, he's going to cite Polaris because that's a known 0 to 90 measurement they could go from for their latitude, and it proves their flat plane, the equatorial plane, and all the nautical almanacs show you that it's from this equatorial plane, which they have to mirror by a tangent plane that they draw on top of a circle, which supposedly represents the globe that the navigator's on. But the globe is never used. It's always a plane. This is all gonna explain itself if you keep playing the video. So most of the time they would be using the stars.
And we've travelled up the river, and we've got to the point where we consider that we are moving into open water. At this point, we will measure our latitude. We will hold this pointing towards the sun. We will put the horizon on the bottom edge, and by moving it within our line of sight, we can then align the sun to the top edge.
And it's proper crude, isn't it?
Well, you think this is crude. Wait till you see the next video where they didn't need any celestial books.
This point here, if you hold the string in your teeth, that distance needs to be recorded. So we would tie a knot. Now we can go off into big water and do big fish and catch lots and lots of big stuff. When we need to come home again, what we need to do is to travel north or south until we can line up once again with the horizon on the bottom and the sun at the top. This will give us our point of entry. We can then turn left or right and head home. You would find several knots.
I don't fully understand.
No, it's Brian's point because the sun is moving. So they use Polaris for the real, they do the evening time because they need Polaris to get the latitude exact. The sun would only be working at high noon if they ever did use it. So they'd have to wait at port until high noon, do it with the sun, go out to sea, wait till high noon, and then do it again, and then go up or down, north or south until that matched, and then just left or right, depending where they're going.
On the string of a canal, this is because you would travel to and from different places. This, for instance, is my house. This one is your house. This one is Uncle Jim's house. Now, if we take...
Oh, I see. So it's predetermined with the knots that you make when you first measure it.
Yep.
And then you just keep you just keep that in your arsenal and dig it out when you need it, and you just match it up with the knots. I understand now. So you have to perform it once to have the knots to then go back and reuse it.
Yes, and if I may add, they have many of these for different ports.
Sure.
Each, yeah.
Yeah, you could label them all up for different locations, but once you've done it and you match it up, then it's going to just work. No, I understand that.
Cool.
That's cool.
Yep.
Take all these knots and record them, you would have the start of a journal. And this, indeed, is the start of the navigator's journal. Log in the latitude of each city of the world.
Very cool indeed. Okay, so that was a great video. This guy needs more subs. Very concise. Glad we got through it without me putting all my objections and misunderstandings up before we got to the end, because that was brilliant. It's going to get a like from me, and I'm going to put a link to his video, as I did a couple of times already, in the live stream chat. So let him know, at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, and in all sincerity, give him some positive remarks, because that was a really good video.
May I comment?
Yeah, you can, yeah.
So this is pre-Nautical Almanac books. Later, they would make star maps, as we'll see with the Chinese. But here's the Arabs using the Kamal with just knots and the sky, and they all assumed the Earth was flat. That's how they got the elevation angle to the stars and created the knots to create the latitude in relationship to that angle. So here's sailors, navigators, believing the world was flat, navigating flat, until someone says, well, you know what? It's a sphere. And then they take all this technology, as cruised as it was and worked, and said, we're getting everything from the equatorial plane, the center of Earth. So they changed nothing in the way it works. They just moved the flat Earth to the center of a ball.
Okay, so that video was called Maritime Navigation, the Kamal, and the videographer is Deeds of Arms. So as I say, there is a link to that videographer's channel and this video. Let him know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me with a positive remark, in the vain hope that he would do the same for us in return should he make a video about us. We're going to move on. So the next video is
Question.
but let me just introduce the next video and get the share link out to that also. So the next video we're going to be covering is called Highlights Ancient Chinese Maritime Technologies, How did the Ancient Chinese Sail the Seas? Again, from a tiny little videographer. So yeah, please, likewise, if you're watching this when we get into it in a second, please let this videographer know at Nathan Oakley 1980 sent me, and hopefully they'd do the same for us should they respond. But this is a different videographer.
Nathan.
It's called The Head Foundation. So check them out. We'll be covering them in a second once Neil's got his comments. Go ahead, Neil.
Yeah, Tent, you said that they were doing it on a flat Earth, and they said, "Oh, now it's a ball." Was there any resistance from any of these people? Like, what are you talking about? Like,
Yes.
Was there any fight?
Yes, there is. It's recorded in historical documents. There was always a fight. And so obviously, you're going to find out in this next segment how the Chinese did it. And up until the early 1900s, the Chinese, as a culture, nation, believed the Earth was still flat, even though the Jesuits, which I have citations for Nathan to read after the second video, came in and said, look, we do it this way and it works. You do it that way and it works. Let us introduce you to our instrumentation. And slowly but surely, the Jesuits convinced the Emperor's court and his navigators that it can work in a sphere model as well. So slowly the world started to accept that you're on the globe, but nothing changed in the mechanics of it. The mechanics is still in the Kamal, and what you'll see, the board that the Chinese use, which is also the same way as the Kamal, because they shared navigation trade secrets with each other, as we talked in the pre-show. So let's just watch the video and let this thing play out.
So this is how the Chinese would sail, or Jingho would sail. He ended up in Hormuz. He wanted to come to Calicut. According to his book, it is 11 fingers.
Okay, so instead of the knot and the distance that you're holding it being the gauge, we've now got fingers as the gauge. Is that correct?
Well, yes, it started off with fingers, and people still use fingers. One finger is 1 degree. A fist is 10 degrees, as long as you extend your forearm, have the bottom of your fist on the horizon and the star or sun on the top. That's 10 degrees for most people, hand size. But it quickly changed, because he's giving the history of it. It quickly changed to something like the Kamal, and he's going to actually pick it up and show it to you in a second.
he will sail in a general direction because at this point, no point looking like it's more than 11 fingers. When he's almost he look up, he says, "Oh, it's more than 11 fingers." I know, Calicut is actually much more south than that. So he will sail in some general direction, some general bearing. I will talk a little bit about how they find the bearing later on. So as they sail closer and closer and closer, and they see the pole star in the night coming down, slowly, until it's almost there.
Pause. As they sail closer and closer and closer, and they see the pole star at night coming down and down, and lower and lower. Right? Everyone know this?
Yeah, I mean, they're describing a reduction in elevation angle to the Polaris measurement that they're making with fingers.
Yeah, exactly. And you need an angle for that. And how do you get an angle? Well, you can't get it from a curved surface, right?
Right.
Yeah, it looks like it's 12 fingers. 12 fingers. Then they'll take out this magical thing, and then they will do this. The angle, subtended, is a fixed angle. So as the ship rock a little bit like that, it aligned the bottom to the horizon. You must remember it's in pitch dark. It's in the darkness of the night. It's not like now. You see, if today, with our understanding of the sky and the latitudes and longitudes, and we have the theory in our mind, and we say, let me design a celestial navigation system.
You're going to need a flat Earth for that.
He agrees.
We know too much. For us to design something that is workable. But if you are that Indian living in Calicut going to Cochin,
is he doing
and
this off a
maybe
desk,
once in a
Mike?
while going to Ceylon, is different. Because that Indian, starting from Calicut, sees there is the pole star, like that. Then he go to Cochin and say, it's higher. Lower.
I can't quite understand what he's saying, and I have to...
I'll explain. He's saying, today you have this complicated system with a nautical almanac, okay? He's saying, but to that Indian, he starts at Calicut, and the pole star is here. When he gets to Cochin, it's over here. All he knows is that it's lower in the sky and higher in the sky based on the ports, and that's how simple it was.
Then go to Sri Lanka, it's lower still. Then what he will do, without any latitude and longitude, without any signs, he will say, perhaps if I can have a way of finding out how high this star is, I'll be able to come back. Why don't I try? I still can depend on the land because Cochin, Calicut, they're all on the shore, right? Why don't I just depend on the land, but I will do my experiment. So guess what? The Arabs and the Indians, they came out with this wonderful thing called a kamal. A piece of wood about this size. When they go down, assuming that he was in this Calicut and said, that pole star is there. Okay, it's like that, right? Like that. I'll put a knot here. Knot. So they tie a Calicut knot. Calicut knot. Then he go to Cochin. Then he say, here. He got a Cochin knot. So the next time, depending, he never give up in his sight. Yeah? He will try.
Okay, I'm still not following along fully.
Well, it's what the first guy said. So when he's in Calicut, the pole star is here. So he ties a Calicut knot. So that knot says, if I ever match the pole star, I'm right where I started my journey from. And then when it goes to Cochin, the elevation angle of the Polaris changed. So then he says, all right, I'm going to tie a knot here for Cochin. So each knot represented a location.
I got you. Same.
And without any... What's that?
Same explanation.
Exactly. And so what he's doing here, as you listen to him, he's saying in this modern day, we have all these books and everything. They didn't need it back then. All they needed was Polaris, a flat earth, and a knot.
Oh, it should be very close to Calicut already. I say this because I want to be philosophical. In fact, some of the things that is in black and white, some of the things that is in our mind, is of a secondary importance. The first importance is something that is learning from the reality of our experience, learning from the reality of our experience directly from our heart.
That's it, right?
Yeah, pretty much. You see what he's saying? He's saying, look, I want to be a philosophy guy at this point because the reality of our experience, it's this simple. So he's trying to make the complicated simple to this audience of his by showing celestial navigation was just an angle measurement to Polaris from different ports where they tie knots. And each knot said, if you go here and it's the same angle, just go left or right, depending where you started from, and you'll be right where you started from. But north and south, the board had to match because that's the bottom was on the horizon and top was Polaris. So real simple navigation without...
I've got someone at my door and I've got your first slide up. Kamal navigation tool.
All right. You want me to go on it while you go to the door? Obviously. Hold on. Let me get it here on my phone. So here we go. Kamal navigation tool. Kamal is a simple navigation device used by Arab navigators in the Indian Ocean since ancient times. It consists of small rectangular card with knotted cord passed through it. The purpose of the Kamal was to determine the distance between the horizon and a particular star at the same time each night. So obviously, nighttime is the best time for this tool because of Polaris, mainly. An alternative or the original method for the same purpose involved the use of fingers held parallel to the horizon. So there comes using the fingers, the fist, and so forth, but you're still using it in the same manner. A navigator would hold the card at a measured distance from his face by means of a series of knots in the cord attached to the card. The Kamal, or measurement with the fingers, was specially well suited to crossing the Indian Ocean on the monsoon wind. The pilot's job was to aim for certain latitude where he knew the city was. In this way, the knots in the cord would delineate the latitude needed to reach a series of specific places. So that's how simple it was. It shows a depiction to the right of it. Did you get back?
I might add something because I don't think.
Yeah, go ahead. Still at the door.
Yeah, my point earlier on was that.
Morning, fellas.
Hey, Chocolate.
Hey, Chocolate.
Hey, can I make a joke
before you go, Brian? Should have been on a different
for
slide.
another minute or two?
Sorry, I was Amazon with a giant box of kitchen towels. Should I be on this picture of a guy with an angle measurement with his fingers?
Well, hang on. You're on the Kamal navigation tool with the bullet points. I just read every one of those. So let's move on to.
Yeah. Okay. Well, but then we'll let Brian interject, and I'll just change the picture when we come back to you. Go ahead, Brian.
No, my point being is that what you must remember is you've been hoodwinked by the globe. As in, if you look at time and date or any of them, all of that is based off of the angle the sun should be seen from your location. Now, I often find that incorrect. The reason is that they base the latitude and longitude grid off of the sun because their globe is back engineered from the latitude and longitude grid. But the latitude and longitude grid has basically nothing got to do with the sun. There are certain points during the year, like the tropics and the equator, you can see the sun is over around that area. But the whole point, and it only works between those two tropics, right? But the latitude and longitude grid is just based on my coordinates is in relation to the GP point of Polaris and nothing else.
I agree.
Whatever that is doing up above, just so I finish, whatever that is doing up above, that is not adhering to circles of latitude. It might be close to them at times, but it's not adhering to the latitude and longitude grid. But the globe is a back engineering of the latitude and longitude grid. So they base all of their angles to the sun and everything else based off of where those latitude lines are on their globe. So they can give you a load of calculation and it'll all come out correct, except for in reality it won't be correct for your location all the time. You will look at the sun, they'll tell you, Simon Date will tell you, because it's based off of that, the sun will be south-southeast, right? And the sun isn't. It's just southeast. It's not south-southeast. Do you know what I mean? Little things like that will be wrong. But they'll tell you, no, the sun is going to be at this angle, you know what I mean, south-southeast. And it won't be. Because they're basing everything off of the sun being connected to the latitude and longitude grid being connected, the latitude lines in particular being connected, well, both of latitude and longitude connected to the sun. Whereas technically it's not. It's all connected to Polaris, and it's then used as a calculator for time and navigation using the sun, but not based off of the sun.
Wow, that's why.
Do you understand what I'm saying?
That is why time and date was wrong when we tracked the sun. That's why.
Yes.
Well, now I know. So the reason it was out by an hour when we got a solstice measurement from someone, I can't remember where, happened a couple of times, is because it's tracked based on Polaris, not the sun, in terms of where it would be, which would shift it. That's why. Okay, I didn't know that. I'm sure Adam would be fascinated. He's probably not by the mic at the minute. 140 people watching. Just going to do a quick warm welcome to all of you who've just joined us. Shout you out. Thank you very much for coming here. Please share the show if you've not done so already. And we're going to get back into this with 10th. So,
well, let me add to what Brian's saying. Most of my research on this, it's always been a star, Polaris. When people start introducing the sun, they're taking leeway to say that. It doesn't mean that's how it was done. The way it was done was mainly Polaris. As you do your own research, and I said please do, you'll see that it was the Polaris was the main star everyone used because it's perfect. It's how it all is done. Anyway, we can go next. Next picture shows.
If I can just add to that,
you're never going to get that. Go ahead, George.
The equatorial plane is measured from the sun's position overhead to Polaris for the grid system on the north. That is.
Well, that's the problem. You see, George, it's not. It's based off of a distance to the GP point of Polaris that the sun happens to somewhat adhere to. So whether the sun was there or not, that wouldn't change the latitude and longitude grid. If the sun went away for a day, let's hope that doesn't do it. But if it did, that wouldn't change the latitude and longitude grid because it's not based off the sun. But on the globe, it is directly connected to the sun.
Brian's right here. All right, let's go to the next slide.
Yeah, we're on it.
All right, so this one's a depiction of an Arab using the kamal. He's got in his teeth the string with the knot going to that location, and he's got the bottom lined with the horizon and the top with the star. Next slide over, modern day guy doing the same thing. As you can see, there's two pictures of him. Does that look like a right angle triangle on the left with the blue water?
Tiny, but
yeah, I mean, if you look at it, they're telling us you don't need a triangle. And here's you can see the depiction in the gray is Polaris at the end of the handle there. And he's got the kamal out and he's got a right angle triangle. The hypotenuse is his angle to the star. And he's got a perpendicular with the surface of the ocean being the baseline. Everyone see that, right?
Yes.
So, okay, that's how it's done. Next slide shows an actual demonstration from a guy using a kamal. It's a modern day reenactment of how they did it. You can see how he's doing it.
Sorry about the size of the photos. I don't know why they were all taken with a potato. Go ahead.
Potato, sorry. All right, go to the first citation there. It says final thoughts. You see that in the middle?
Yeah, someone else at my door again. Can't quite believe it.
Okay, we'll talk. Hey, Brian,
Yes, Ted.
what are some of your final thoughts while Nathan gets the door?
Well, it's just they're basically showing how simplistic it actually is. When they started claiming the Earth was a globe, they had no choice but to complicate it. So it's like that person you talked to, that navigator you talked to, Ken, who said it's easiest just to treat the Earth as flat as stationary. That
Right.
he don't when he was navigating on when he was sailing or whatever. That's how he did it, and it's the easiest way to treat it. And the reason it's the easiest way to treat it is because it's reality. Everything with the globe is like, even with the dip correction, everything. They just complicate it with maths as much as possible,
Yeah, but
and
that's,
add in as many things as possible. Come on.
Go ahead, Darwin.
that's because you can actually still use the flat measurements in the globe model. Just don't think about it too much, and especially don't try to trace the origins of it and all that.
It's not
Right?
that you don't. No. Well, you're half right. You are 100% right. It's just how you phrased it was slightly off, because when you say don't think about it, no, start after the measurement's been taken. Does that make sense?
Yeah, pretty much. So
Start
you
with the
just have to kind of like use the flat. Don't think about that you're actually using the flat, but do think of that you can definitely use that and still
Almost.
use that flat to prove
We'll
your
get there.
globe.
We'll get there. I'm glad I'm refining you for a change. You're normally refining me. Okay, no, because what they do is they'll describe the number. So, for instance, a good example of this is Toon's challenge. Okay, so when Toon says, well, you've got these three angles, and then he lists off the 37, 42, I don't know, 76, right? He lists off the three numbers. How does that work on a flat plane? Do you see how by asking you about the numbers, the angles that he's taken, he's not talking about measuring the angles off a flat plane and then having to ignore that. He just starts with the numbers. Do you see what I mean? So although obviously there's an inference of the angle that the number is linked to, and that requires a flat plane, but if you just detail the number when your example starts and go from there, there's no need to even consider the fact that that number required a flat plane to get it. Make sense?
Right. So you just name the data and don't name the source of the data, basically. You
Well, don't
emphasize
highlight
that.
the fact that the number, well, how'd you get this 47-degree angle? What's an angle? Nobody's defining what that is. It just starts as being a number that needs an explanation. You understand?
And if somebody then points that out, then they have to go into the weird bendy crawling phase where they start to claim bent angles and curved angles and that kind of nonsense, which they definitely don't use.
Yeah, exactly. They have to start defying their horizontal axioms that are used within their begging the question, proof of nothing, perspective hijacking Earth calculator. Right, 10th, do you still want this massive block of text on screen?
I have something to say on that.
After Brian, yes.
Okay, well, let's just give the audience a heads up of what's going on. Okay, because we've got like 140 people watching. It's dropped a little bit. 135 people watching currently, which is a big number. Well, it's not a big number. It's just where it should be generally, and sometimes it's lower than that. Anyway, but first day back, I'm keen. Everyone's full of beans. And there's a subject that I want to broach once we've covered what we're covering, which is going to be Raichi. So we'll keep live for that, because I think it'll spur a discussion, which I've got a point.
Oh, good.
Well, we got a crescendo here to finish with because there's more slides, but I'll do it after Brian.
Yeah, Brian.
Yeah, I'll be quick. The point I was going to make is that what they do, and I've said this in the past, and I'll say it again, and I will probably say it again another 40 times, is they make the measurements, right, which are flat plane measurements with the sextant, but then they take them and they place them on the universal transverse Mercator map, which instantly distorts the measurements, because the universal transverse Mercator map is a globe flattened out, but not flattened out from north center. So it's a cylinder. It's a globe turned into a cylinder, a flat cylinder map, and then they use the Haversine formula to re-distort it again back to globe. And then they ask you, how does it work on your flat plane? When all they've actually done is taken the measurements on a flat plane and then doubly distorted them, and then presented it to you and giving you the burden of proof reversal kind of thing.
Yes, indeed. It's going to take at least 5 minutes for you to go through that, but we did on Friday's show. So check out if this is 1963, it would be 1962, because Brian and I went back and forth, mostly me and my exemplary knowledge, let's be frank. But we went back and forth about this and discussed how the process takes place to convert from flat to sphere to cylinder to flat to globe with have a sign. There's a summary for you, eh, Brian? That went bad. Anyway, 10th, let's wrap this up.
Well, hang on. Don't be so fast. This main body with the big text, you see where it says final thoughts, number 9 there in the middle?
Yes, because I have Spidey vision and can read that small.
Okay. But hang on. Go to the next slide. I'm highlighting the section above it.
Excellent.
See, I knew you had tiny vision, so I took care of it. With the withdrawal of imperial support and renewed period of inward focus, no new cartographers were trained in the field state of the art. Progress ceased. In addition, production of planimetric maps like the Golden Mirror or Channeling Water, which were produced around the same time as the Kangxi Jesuit Atlas, to some extent using similar principles as the Jesuit maps, e.g. 1994, was no longer supported. In fact, the modern cartographic methods introduced by the Jesuits, therefore, only had a limited impact on Chinese cartography. And so most of Chinese society continued to believe that the earth was flat. It took until the late Qing era, during the Guangzhou period, 1871 to 1908, before cartographic developments received renewed impetus and general societal attitudes started to change. Maps were finally drawn based on longitude, latitude surveys using modern map projections.
Jesuit based, they gave them to them.
Oh, I know. This is the whole point.
Carry on, 10th. Yes, that's true.
Yeah, so the Jesuits came and they introduced to the Chinese navigation, hey, you know, we use angles too, but we live on a sphere. And the Chinese adopted the tools. They liked some of the tools, the newfangled stuff, but they said, no, we still think the earth is flat. And so one of the emperors kicked the Jesuits out, then they came back later. I'm doing a quick summary of a bunch of reading here now. And then slowly started to catch on again. And it wasn't until 1908 where it finally kind of came to a head to where they say, okay, we live on the globe. We're going to use the European method going forward. And the cartography and the map started to change. But prior to that, they resisted. Why? Well, because the Kamal was working. We're going to show you their version of the Kamal in a second. And it's much like we finding articles in America in the 1920s, they were still teaching flat earth in schools. Well, the whole of Chinese society believed the earth was flat and they were navigating as flat. So I'm going to make a summary point on this later, but let's go on to the next, skip the next one because that's Andrew Thomas Young.
I have something to say in a moment.
Yeah, I know. Just let me get him on the right slide. Go to the slide where it shows celestial horizon, the globe, and the 3 parallels, and then let Brian do what he's doing.
Okay, I've got that up, and go ahead, Brian.
Yeah, just very quickly. It was around 1908, 1910 that Georges Lemaitre, the Jesuit priest, it was around that time that he introduced the Big Bang. So it's all around that time that, that the globe was actually, like this thing about, they've known it's a globe for 2,000 years. No, the globe has been systematically input into society across the whole world over a long period of time. And it wasn't until around the 1900 point that they really, did the job.
Well, then they declassified it. They put they put the system in place.
Yes, that's a good point. Yes, thank you, Brian. Owen, thank you. Just thank you. Go ahead, Tent.
All right.
What?
Yes, good point, Brian. Now we have this image here showing the globe introduction to how everything works, which is you need a plane. So they've got the rational horizon, which is the equatorial plane. That's the true altitude, by the way, in all the celestial books. So the true altitude you must match when you do celestial navigation must match that center equatorial plane and the angle from it, as you see. The next picture above it is the tangent plane they draw on the sphere that they inserted, which Nathan says so eloquently, surplus to requirement. It's not necessary because it was never necessary because you're using the celestial horizon, which is the equatorial plane. We're going to tell you what that is in a minute, and the penny will drop for most of you. And then if you're in an airplane, same thing with a bubble sextant. So never in this image are you ever getting your location based on anything curved. It all requires a plane. It's their picture. It's from their books. This is the way it's done. Next picture. This is incredible. The angle measured with the sextant is in reality one corner of a right triangle formed by U, the celestial body, and its geographical position on Earth. The image is funny, hilarious, at the same time riveting, because you must have a 90. And the purpose of rocking the sextant until you get perpendiculars to establish the sun's zenith GP position. That's when you say mark, and you get the hour, well, you start with the seconds, then minutes, then the hour, because you got to get it precise. Okay, and then there's a guy on the boat. Now, how in the world does that work on a curved surface when the dotted line shows you the requirement of a plane? It's so obvious, right? Next slide. Okay, so again, from their imagery, you've got the celestial horizon, which is really true altitude, which is really the rational horizon. They got many names for it. Then you got the tangent plane on Earth, the geodal horizon, okay, which mirrors that because you need that because you can't get an elevation angle from a curved surface, in this case, a circle representing Earth. And then you got the sensible horizon, which is the observer's eye horizontal. And this is where dip measurement, when you're sighting the horizon with the sextant, is necessary. So you have all three things matching. You need three planes, depending how you do it. So you have the bubble sextant, you got the sensible horizon. If you're going to use the sextant using the horizon after height of eye correction, you got the geodal horizon. And then, of course, they all must match the celestial horizon, which is their version of where all the angles are coming from, the center of the Earth. So never do you see anything circular or curved in achieving this angle, ever. Next slide. This one we're all familiar with. It shows the box. You must have this box. And there's 4 90s in this box. Each corner is a 90. And guess what? There's the red. That's the GP of the observer with the sextant. There's the bluish color, which is the star. And that's the GP of the star. And it's always subtracted from 90. Well, you can't have a 90 on a curved surface. And so that's why all the previous pictures were necessary to show you how it's being done. So here it is. It tells you exactly the zenith distance is 1,800 nautical miles from the GP where the star is directly over the Earth and where the observer is directly over the Earth. Next slide. As we found out in the RA and declination, which is the equatorial mount telescopes, that they even require a disk, a flat plane. And here we got people, globers, who think that the equatorial mount telescope works from a curved surface. This is how it's done. Go to the citation right after that. I'll read it. It may be a bit confusing for beginners to imagine the celestial equator and the related declination. A really simple way to picture this is to replace the sphere of the Earth with a flat circular platform on which the telescope stands. The platform has the size of Earth's equator. Are you kidding me? Globers, anti-flat earthers, you think when you look through an equatorial mount telescope that you're standing on the location with the region of the Earth's equator? Flat disk? Is that what you're thinking? Or do you think you're on the curved surface? Because you're doing it from the center. You're doing it from a flat plane. You're doing it with a flat Earth. This is so incredible what we're reading here. Next slide. Look at this. This is the reality. What you see here is a guy laying on his back, looking up. That is the reality in which everything's done. That thing on the bottom, that globe, surplus to requirement. Doesn't belong here. Next slide. We've always liked this one. This is from a navigation channel. When we redid it just recently, Nathan did a review again on it. You have to listen to the guy giving the YouTube talk. He says, I could have shown you how a sextant works with the sextant in my hand, but I decided to do this because this is what the observer sees. As funny as it is, he's admitting that the observer with a sextant must have a right angle triangle, and this is what he sees as depicted by the red triangle. He doesn't see what's underneath it. He doesn't do it on the globe. I'm done. The
Perfect.
globe is done.
Really good presentation. Thank you. That was epic.
Yeah.
Just
Can I
before
say
anyone else
something?
talks, go ahead, Arwin. Sorry to cut you off. I just wanted to keep the presentation nice and concise. And Brian's tangent, yes, it got through. I just didn't want that to segue into lots more tangents. Go ahead, though, anyway.
All right. Yeah. I realized that, but I mean, I did think it was very worthy to notice that the Jesuit, when they went around and basically altered maps and all that, they didn't just say, "Hey, the Earth is a globe." They just gave him these maps and like, this is how you're supposed to do it. And the people that understood it very well, they would have protested and said like, yeah, but you're suggesting like it's a globe. But they weren't really admitting it at the time. That phase came later when everybody had those systems. And then suddenly, oh, hey, it's a globe. It turns out it's a globe. Oh, look, all these maps really account for it being a globe. But they didn't say that as they were planting it everywhere.
Not really, because I have citations where they were kicked out of China because of that, and they were saying that. So maybe some weren't, but they were saying it, and it says exactly in the citation.
Or they figured it out.
Yeah, but
We're going to get into this. We're going to get into this
agenda.
wrangled angle in just a moment, because in the meantime, what we're going to do right now, a little bit unorthodox for this particular show, but as we've got over 150 people watching, what I'm going to actually do is suggest that if you'd like to become a member, this is what you'd get, because this is normally where I'd round out the show. I'm not going to, but I'm going to suggest that if you don't want to become a member and pay the expense of getting the show early, you can actually subscribe to my second channel. So that's the main reason for this plug. So if you want to catch up with what's going to be discussed in the next half an hour live, this would typically be part of the after show. So check out in the link below this video, the live stream that is, the link to Nathan Oakley channel, where for free you can get the uncut and after show. And while we discuss Raichi, this would typically be a discussion point that I would keep for the after show. But just as a taster, you can check out what the members get, because they get it a few days early, or if it's a weekend, maybe 3 or 4 days early. And yeah, become a member if you want to check out what's going to be discussed in the next half an hour. We will eventually transition to a short after show after that, but you as a live stream audience member currently will get to take part in what we would typically do as an after show, in the vain hope that you'll subscribe to my second channel or become a Nathan Oakley 1980 channel member. So that's just my plug for my own show, because there's 150 people watching, so why not? We're going to get into it now. So Raichi, that's the discussion point, because there's been a few people going by in the comments that I noticed, which is why I've kept us live, because it keeps it current as well. Because if I leave it for 2 or 3 days or more in the after show for people who do subscribe to my second channel, subscribe today, or became a member just so they can check out this conversation if it prolongs beyond 2 hours, because I'm not going to let the stream go beyond that. It's current, right? So people are talking about a transition from flat earther to glober by a semi-prominent upward earth rising proponent in some instances called Raichi. Now, she's come under the microscope from us recently because of her claims of upward rising earth, or at the very least her investigation into it. And from what limited information I know about Raichi, she likes to fight in the affirmative position to gain an understanding of the position when it's attacked, which is a wise and sensible thing to do. I actually did something very similar when I first started, by just doing the same with the commenters, as opposed to going out on the circuit, which takes a lot more balls. She's female, but there we go. Anyway, she's got a lot of tenacity about her, and I don't know anything about this situation beyond the commenters suggesting that she's transitioned from globe to from flat to globe. Let's get it right way around. So first and foremost, does anybody know anything about this before we get into it? I've already formed an opinion based on that limited amount of information, by the way, which I'll give at the end or somewhere in between.
I had
Darwin first. Darwin first.
No, I got the same info. I didn't actually watch her latest stream. I heard she went on Fight the Flat Earth and basically sided with him or something.
Okay.
about
Anybody
the
else?
globe. That's it.
Before we start, can I do a quick plug, Nathan? It'll be quick.
Go ahead.
All right. Well, I did our latest video on biblical cosmology, and this time it's on Windows of Heaven. And, well, what can I say about it? Let's see here. Right. So I did one on biblical cosmology and Windows of Heaven, and it's got some things you guys may not be aware of. So you guys should check that out. And I also do give a shout out to QE in this one, right?
You're useless. Check it out where?
On the Righteous Force channel, which I'll post in the YouTube chat soon.
Perfect. Okay.
Okay, that's it.
Excellent. Right, Arwin.
What?
Oh yeah, we already had Arwin. Who went after Arwin in terms of Raichi and Flat Earth? We've had from you, Arwin, and
I just want to say I'm not surprised. She might as well have been, because it seemed like I said, that whole argument her and Dale have is pretty much anti-flat Earth. I mean, if you ask me.
Well, I have an opinion about her, but I gave you the data. This is all I got from my perception, because I have kind of kept track of her. I think she's just like this chronic fence sitter, and she just doesn't really come off any fence, but she might lean to one side or the other, and she really likes getting attention from either sides, like trying to convince her. And I think that that's actually what's driving her. I don't think she really
Brian, tell us what's going on, Brian.
Hello, Neil.
In the middle of talking.
Yeah, that was obviously the gap that you desperately wanted us to understand you sought when you were interjecting. No, definitely not. Arwin was definitely well in the full flow of that. There was no way there was a pause. Go ahead, Arwin.
I'm just saying, I don't think she really had a solid position. And where she drifts in the moment reveals that to me, that she doesn't have like a backlaying cohesion that she keeps following. She basically goes all over the place, and she entertains anything without any reservations. So I think she's a permanent fence sitter that's just playing around.
Neil,
that's my opinion.
No, I'm saying I'm sure Brian knows, because he keeps in contact with us. So I'd like to hear what happened from Brian, not opinions.
Well, yeah. Well, I did ask her on Discord. I haven't looked back in whether she has just switched over. But I know basically, well, what happened. I don't know if she's gone back to the globe. I didn't hear her say she had. I didn't hear any of that. But what I do know is that Raichi, from the moment she got into this arena, I told her, don't listen to them. None of them are your friends. They're all deceivers. None of them are on your side, right? I said the nice ones are predators too. And what's happened with Raichi is she spent all her time in this arena avoiding us here and listening to everybody else, which is why she does so many little things that she missed.
That's not true.
Like when
That's not true. I've seen Raichi in our chat plenty of times. What are you talking about? She hasn't avoided us.
But she's not. She's not in here. She was never in here. She's.
Oh, I see. She's not. She's not one of us. Yeah. I see.
One of us.
Not one of us.
Always giving. Can I finish? Because I was asked. So let me finish. She's always giving time to the ballers. Now, I'm not saying every one of the ballers are bad people. The point I'm making is they all have the same agenda. And they all have the same beliefs. So she's giving time to people who are, in my opinion, mentally compromised. That's the truth. And then she started giving time to crazy things. Go on, Adam.
Yeah, I wouldn't go with the ad-hom bit, but the bit you were making, I think, from experience, when Raichi did come in here, I think your summary is quite correct in that she does spend a lot of time discussing flat Earth, but she's never spent it over here to even grasp the point we were making when she came over with the uproad riding. She didn't understand our points, and I think, as you may be critical for, doesn't bother to spend to learn this side of the argument, but she's engaging a lot of time with the Bevs, the Dells, and the anti-flat earthers to support flat Earth or sit on the fence, as you're saying. But I'd agree with you. I don't from the conversation we had with her when she was she hadn't bothered to learn this side or appreciate it. Whether she did, I mean, she may just disagree with it. From my conversation, it looked like she didn't understand it.
Sorry, but you're right. She does actually, like, she has repeated the arguments at times, but it's like she never really sided with it. She just established, like, okay, that's this side of the argument, and then left it. And then
Is there anybody who... Sorry. Is there anybody here who had listened to the FTFE Raichi conversation and has input?
No, I asked that at the start.
Well, I have a point that connects to that. Given that they never reference a curving Earth, what does it matter if she says she believes it's a sphere?
Doesn't.
She's still a flat Earth.
But I was gonna point out the pain relief that she's temporarily offered some of the chat members, which amuses me greatly, regardless of if they're right or have just taken inference from something she hasn't necessarily implicitly implied. But there we go. Pain relief is there's a whole wave of it coming through the chat. You're like, oh, isn't that sweet? Oh, one person, according to them, transitions back and, quote, she's seen sense.
Right, they're all elated about this. They're literally shouting from the roof, "We got one! We got one! Yes! A flat earther! There's a baller again! It's a miracle!"
Yeah.
God praise R.
Right, to reiterate.
So in the meantime, meantime, they got Ranty and Raichi, but millions have come to flat Earth. I'll take those numbers.
That kind of, I'll have to diminish that point now to reiterate John's, which is who cares? You know, the belief of one individual in regards to a flat Earth is inconsequential to me. And when we have the constant morning discussion, which is recurring, about what does it matter to Neil specifically when he's like, when will the masses come? And I'm like, who cares? Well, in this instance, what happens if everybody deserts flat Earth for the globe? I would have the same attitude, which is who cares? It makes no difference. So while many would like to spin into the positive if we had suddenly a vast influx of people moving to flat Earth as a belief, I would say that was actually very negative, because having a belief in flat Earth, which may be the position Raichi has found herself in, if she was, let's just take it as read that she has transitioned back. Well, she didn't ever understand that Earth is flat because she couldn't transition back. So therefore she was in amidst a belief. And if there were tens of thousands, if not millions or billions of people that were all under the belief that Earth was flat, I'd go, oh, that's bad. You know, why don't they know it's flat? Because we do. And therefore it's inconsequential. I want John to reiterate his point because I'm going off the back of him with this. It doesn't matter if there's a bazillion people coming to flat Earth or one in this instance leaving. What difference does it make? We know it's flat. We know how we can show it to be flat.
Right.
Go on, John.
Right. And even the ballers are flat earthers. They just deny that in their dogma. They never reference a curving Earth, ever. It is never in reference to a curved surface. So they're still flat earthers.
I agree with John.
Even when they want to say it's the ball.
Perfect.
Sorry,
Thank you,
John. I agree with John. That was the whole point of my presentation, showing that they use flat surfaces. So yeah, but that wasn't my point in saying millions are coming. They're coming because the deception is being shown to them of the globe Earth. They're not coming to flat Earth like, oh, okay, it's flat. No, I've been lied to, is what they're saying. That's a wake-up call, and that's what I like.
Well, maybe. I can kind of agree with you from the sentiment of the people around me, which say that many of the people who argued in my family specifically, let's say, about flat Earth previously, because they were so indoctrinated with Big Daddy government, and now people have been softened up and are more receptive because they go, oh, well, if I've now appreciated that I've been lied to about X, then maybe I should reconsider Y, where I recently braced against it, because all things are true that come from the higher powers that should not be. Now, when they start to recognise that they maybe should not be, they'll question other things that they braced against. So, yeah, that alludes to a softening up of the population. But again, that's true for anything deceptive, not necessarily just flat Earth, or specifically more likely flat Earth. So, again, in that regard, I just want to go back to John. He's saying no matter what side you sit, there's a certain level of appreciation. Now, earlier in the show, we were talking about the level of appreciation for cutting off at the knees arguments that move beyond gas pressure when you're talking about gradients and arguing the toss with their rebuttal, when you just need to point out that you need a container and stick with that. Well, that sort of advanced level argumentation is where John's disseminating to the audience how a glober requires a flat plane, and ultimately would mean that their decrying of a flat plane is a denial of a very key aspect, foundational in nature, of their own globe faith, which is based on a flat plane. So it is inconsequential. The further your knowledge base goes, it might be that, if you want to be a conspiratard and look at this in a more jazzy, sexed up light, that the people who are alluding to it being a globe and protecting it, the Knights Templar or the Jesuits or whatever you want to, the Illuminati, you say that those guys knew every step that we're disseminating now, which is to say that they would allude to it being a ball because they knew it was flat and how it's measured and described as being a ball. Therefore, they have the hidden hand aspect of knowledge that lets them know, unlike the populace, the general grey and washed, that it's not actually a ball when they say it is, and without feeling like they're lying. Because for you, the mere peasant that understands we're standing on a spherical surface, you are, with respect to the stars that have been transposed from the flat plane angle measurement out to the ball we're standing on in your mind, so you can understand, peasant, how the stars work. You are standing on a ball. But they understand it's flat like we do. Now, the ballers don't understand that, but they're the peasants in this example, aren't they, John?
Yeah, if you wanted to take that route describing it, yes, they would be the peasants in that.
Hey, I want to say this. I'm gonna end it with something I'm gonna say to y'all may not agree with. The populace, I ain't gonna say the populace, I say maybe the majority are globers. Okay, let's say in society or whatever, because of the indoctrination, right? And that is already, we have exposed it numerous times to be a ridiculous dogmatic belief with measurable, navigable, and observable evidence and proof, documentation, even from their own sources, even from their own origins, everything that Tent says, everything, it's all substantiated. Raichi supported Dell on something that was considered ridiculous, absurd, and just profoundly preposterous on both sides, to the globers and to the flat earthers, who were the successful, maybe the minority, who knows? Maybe there's some people in the closet that don't want to admit it. We ain't going to talk about the stats, but we are the victors in this whole thing. So you got to understand where she's coming from. And then to be put on a stage of humility by her own peers on her stance and belief of this earth rising, it could be something of a vindictive way, or like Neil said, Aaron said, her fence bouncing. So she's looking at it for her own dignity. Where does she go to? Being with the earth rising has been, I would have to say, it has been quite humiliating. To go back to the flat earth and concede and admit that she was wrong, maybe she didn't want to go that way. So she's leaning on that globe side, because that is still considered the most, I'm not going to say popular, but the most known, normal way to go. So it kind of takes away from that humility forefront. So that's how I'm looking at it.
Who cares?
I know.
I know what you're saying.
Yes, thank you, Dean.
I view it different from talking to Raichi. I know for a fact from talking to her, both when I was talking to her on the show here, but privately as well, she didn't understand her own claim concerning the upward rising earth. A lot of people do this. They have an idea about something. You see it with the ballers all the time. Like at the moment, for instance, for an example, at the moment I have a load of the ballers, including well-known ballers, trying to add perspective into their model. Right? Because in reality, perspective exists, right? Now, the same thing was happening with the upward rising earth thing with Raichi, where she didn't understand the implications of what she was claiming. And there's other things. I know she doesn't understand air travel. I know she has never really researched that. I know from questions I've asked her. So the thing about it is, Raichi, when she got into this, she researched Einstein and Newton and everything else, but she didn't research the things that actually proved the Earth to be flat. So she probably has nothing that she could say as a proof that the Earth is flat, other than the fact that you see too far for the Earth to be a globe. So, like, I mean, no matter what way it is, if you switch back to the globe now, you'll never be able to sit there. I'm not saying she has, because I don't know if she has, but I'm just saying if she did, like Ranty, there's no way Ranty can look out at the horizon and go, it's a globe. Ranty knows he can't say that to himself. He can't do it. Jose JG can't look out at the horizon and go, it's a globe. He can't do that. He knows that he can't say that because he knows the horizon is not the geometric edge that they were all brought up and led to believe it was. So no matter what you do, every time you look at the horizon, you have to pretend that you're not, that I don't know what you have to do, but you can't, it won't say, you can't say it's a globe and look at the horizon. You can't do that. No matter who what they do. So, you know what I mean? That is always going to be a quandary for anyone who does switch back. Just that one instance alone.
Well, you mentioned they had a model. Models are built on measurements. I'm back guarantee you, I can guarantee you, there is no model for a globe Earth in a sky vacuum. That doesn't exist.
Yeah, truly. What they have, though, is a mathematical model. So when they say the globe model, they're talking about a mathematical back engineering.
No, they don't. They don't have that either. They lost that.
Did you ever see that model?
What did you say, John?
They lost that. They lost angles from a flat plane. They don't have.
Yeah, but that doesn't change their model being a mathematical back engineering from the angles from a flat plane. That's my point.
Right, model it doesn't make it a globe model.
Well, mathematically, their model is a globe model.
No,
but in reality, their math doesn't fit reality. You know what I'm saying?
No, it's not a globe model. They're tricking you. There's no mathematical model of a globe either.
Well, there's an 8 inches per mile square drop model.
That's
and a
based on
radius
what?
of 3959 model. That's
based
but it's
on
my
what?
point. It's based on flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris, back engineering of that. But the point is, they don't have a model that matches reality. They have a model that matches the maths of that model.
What John is saying, what John is saying is they have false math, so they don't have a model.
No, they don't. They're misinterpreting math and believing that they have a model. That's delusion. No, they don't have a mathematical model either. They don't have anything. It's the world's biggest magic trick. They don't even have the rabbit in the hat to trick people. They just tell people that there's a rabbit in there and everyone's believed them. There is no model, mathematical or otherwise.
You know,
I'd have to disagree with that.
Hold on a second, Brian. You know, John was trying to illustrate this about a month or two ago when he was trying to explain to us that what they do is they'll offer you a flat Earth proof and call it a globe claim. And then they'll try and debunk your straw man flat Earth claim that you haven't made. But what you're actually doing is both sides are arguing aspects that require a flat plane. And they're trying to debunk one and leave the other that's claimed to be proving a globe. Do you understand? So what John's saying is...
Yeah, but I've made that same point.
I'm just trying to summarise
for
what I'm
a
saying.
long time, just in a different way.
Sure.
Every time...
No one's decrying the conversion from flat. But what John is saying, once that conversion's been made, there isn't a conversion. The differential calculation, if you're going to use the calculator as the model, well, the differential calculation from a flat plane is not a globe model, is what John's saying. Even though it's got a dingleberry dangling beneath that flat plane, it's an illusion of it being a model, because it isn't.
Yeah, but I said in the past many times that their whole globe model is based on the hijacking of real-world optical and natural effects. That's what they did. As an example, their force of gravity, they had to hijack buoyancy from 900 years before anyone even came up with any ideas about a force of gravity. or claimed to have come up with it, because buoyancy debunked the force of gravity. So what happened? Buoyancy was caused by a force of gravity. They just hijack every single thing that's real, and then they reverse the burden onto you and hand you some straw man nonsense, right? That you never claimed. I understand that, but that doesn't change, does it? I'm not trying to have an argument with John. I would disagree that they don't have.
Okay, stop a second.
They do
Brian.
have a
Just
mathematical model.
Okay, just stop a sec. He's not trying to argue with you, and you are agreeing with him in every instance, but missing the subtlety of what he's saying. I picked it up about a week ago, so I'm not going to claim like I'm some big head brain for finally picking up what John's been trying to put down for about 6 months. But literally about 10 days, maybe a week ago, I started to actually go, oh, right. Now, he's not trying to argue with you and say you're wrong, Brian. So just try and just let him reiterate his point just once more, because I can hear it in his voice that he's starting to get a bit frustrated with it, which he was about 2 months ago, by the way.
Right. When you say models, you build models with measurements. Everything that we've seen now, from orbital mechanics, even gravities and its eccentricity, right, is built on a flat plane. There is no globe model, mathematical or otherwise. It's a delusion. It doesn't exist. They take a flat plane with a sphere around it and then say, see, that's a globe. No, that's not a globe. There is no globe model.
Yeah, I have to disagree.
May I real quick?
It was to me. Go on.
Real quick, right? Yeah, real quick. You're both saying the same thing. I know Brian's point. I know Refractor's point. We're all saying the same thing. What Refractor is saying is absolutely 100% true. What Brian is saying, he's describing the process of the deception. That's all. Brian is describing the process of the deception. He's not disagreeing with John, nor is anyone here. They never had a globe. They never had the measurements. It's all planes. Brian agrees with that. But now Brian wants to say, this is how they've hijacked it. And then we're going back to, well, they never had anything to hijack because they never had the measurements. Yes, we know that. But let me explain the process of how they're lying. It's two different ways of looking at it.
No, it's a little bit different from that. No, it's a little bit different from that. Leave me speak for myself for a second. John is saying they have no measurements. Yes, they do. They have 1 million flat Earth measurements that they use as that they back engineer into a mathematical globe model, where there's an 8 inches per mile square drop. They just hijack the latitude and longitude grid, which is based off of flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris. That's what they did. And they created a mathematical model based off of real world measurements that had nothing to do with the curve of their model, that they're claiming within their model.
What is it dropping from? What is their mathematical drop dropping from? What is their mathematical drop dropping from?
Flat Earth.
Well, the drop is from, no, it's actually not. It's from your feet. The drop is from your feet. 8 inches per mile square drop from where your feet stand.
It's both. Differential from surface level, if you want to call that, from your feet to eye level, if you were standing at sea level. So it's a differential calculation.
No, but the mathematics are based off from your feet. If you look at the maths, they're actually from your feet.
I appreciate that. But what I'm saying is, okay, let's not major on the minors. Yes, correct. But the point is that a flat Earth is required, and that's John's point. But you're now majoring on the minors rather than letting John now focus on that and let it be the point.
But didn't I make a 40-minute video? I don't know when it was.
It's not going
Hang on, didn't I make a 40-minute video on the origin of their radius?
Yeah.
Which is the hijacking of flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris.
Yeah.
John is making a point to me that there isn't a mathematical model, and I disagree with that. Because I can show it to him on the so-called metabunk.
Let me have a try. Let me just try it for a second, John, and then go ahead. Paradoxically, if you're going to describe how you're standing on the surface of a sphere that derives its measurements from a flat plane, then to say you're standing on the sphere is in direct contravention of the measurement you take in the first instance to derive that concept. Therefore, to say you're standing on the globe model, if I'm begging it so it's in your favour, Brian, so it does exist, then that paradoxically only exists from the flat plane you took first. But that is where John steps in and goes, well, that means there isn't a globe model at all because your first measurement is flat. Therefore, it cannot be a globe model. To start with anything other than a measurement of a sphere means you haven't got a sphere model to be basing it on. If your measurement starts flat, it isn't a globe model.
Yeah, well, I'll have to use Anthony Riley here then. In maths, I can, if you have 2 apples, I can take 5 apples off you and owe you 3. But in reality, and you will have -3 apples. But in reality, that doesn't fit. So that's why I use the term mathematical model, because their model mathematically doesn't have to fit reality. It's mathematical.
Demonstrate a model that does not use the flat plane for the calculation. Calculations are mathematics. Demonstrate it now or don't say it anymore.
There you go.
Ask me again.
Did you hear that?
Ask me again. I didn't hear that.
Say it slower. Go on.
Right now, present a model that does not use a flat plane, right, for its calculations. If you can't do that, there is no model in math.
But a mathematical model doesn't have to adhere to reality.
Well, then what's the point in it? When we were debating about... Hold on. You can't descend it into that,
But
Brian,
that's my point.
Hold on. It's not a point. When they're our opponents arguing this as a point of contention about reality. So to descend it into, well, the mathematics of a globe are just a folly that aren't detailing reality, is to descend the argument into the point of absurdity where, well, we're just arguing about pointless nonsense maths that don't have anything to do with anything, when in reality we're debating about the nature of our existence, Brian. Come on.
Yeah, but that's not my fault that these people believe a mathematical model to be their reality, is it?
Right, demonstrate the mathematical model.
Okay, John.
Just 1 second.
Present it.
1 second.
Don't say it. Present it.
Leave me say it to Nathan, what I was trying to say. It is that stupid that we're arguing with people over their belief in a mathematical model that doesn't comport to reality. I'm sorry, but that is where we're at.
Of a flat Earth, though.
We've
It's a flat Earth model. That's John's point. Hold on, Brian. John's point is that that model you're saying is a globe model that they're saying comports to the reality of their globe world. Isn't. It's a flat Earth model, if you want to call it anything, because it's starting with calculations and measurements of a flat plane. How can you call that a globe model? I want to stick with this, John. John, let John go. I'm putting a buffer between the two of you. Go ahead, John.
Right. You say that they have a mathematical model, you need to present that. That is a positive claim that's of existence. Now we need to see it. But it can't be calculating things from a flat plane or measuring a flat plane. Those are not globe models.
I can present it. I can present it right now. And I can present this in diagram form if you want, or I can just tell you what it is. It's a circle. That's all it is. They hijacked the circle.
No.
That is what it is.
You can't
I
say
showed
a
this
circle.
before.
That doesn't make sense. No.
Hang on. Their mathematical model is just a circle. It's all starts and ends with the measurements that it's back engineered from are real world flat Earth measurements, but their mathematical model is just a circle and derivations of a circle. Yeah. That's all it is. Their whole model is a circle.
From the inside of a circle?
Yeah, flat 2D circle.
Just 21,000. Yeah. When they converted from statute miles to 69.04 statute miles to 60 nautical miles, right? That was a flat plane conversion because statute miles are horizontal straight line measurements, and they needed them before they could know what a nautical mile was. But as soon as they derived the latitude and longitude grid from Polaris, flat Earth elevation angles to Polaris, and they had a measurement in nautical miles, they just hijack, because the problem is nautical miles are what? They're based off of degrees, right, on the arc scale, right? Now, basically what they did is they just took 2 protractors and put one underneath the other and hijacked the circle. That's what they did. I had a whole presentation on it before.
Well, where's the globe model?
The great circle hijacking.
Ask your question, John.
Where is the globe model in that? You You've referenced a flat Earth model, flat Earth calculations, and flat Earth measurements. Where is the globe model in that?
The mathematical model based off of circle is the globe model.
No, it's not. You just no.
Well,
no, it's not.
I don't. Well, I'll tell you what. Right. I see what Adam or if QE's here or someone else wants to have a say because I can't see how I'm wrong to call what they believe in a mathematical model. That's the only way I could describe it. Otherwise, what is it they're believing?
You can have the
mathematics have to adhere to. Does mathematics have to adhere to reality? Now, I'm going to go quiet and see if someone else has something to say on that.
You can ask me.
Yeah, if I said they have a mathematical model, is that incorrect?
Yes.
Why?
Well, you see, 5 years ago, I told them they don't have a model at all. See, you need them to have a model because you need to deconstruct it. That's your mission in life. You do a damn fine job of it. But there is no mathematical model. There is no model. There's nothing.
With that, I'm going to say if you are watching this on either Nathan Oakley 1980 or Nathan Oakley premiering streams, then stay tuned as there will be an after show to follow. Unfortunately, though, if you are watching this live, this is where we bid you farewell. So another massive thank you to all of you. Smashed the super chat, liked, commented, shared, subscribed, joined as a member, and all that good stuff. I've been Nathan Oakley. Another massive thank you to today's Discord and G+ panels for making today's live show possible. Stay tuned if you're watching on an after show, and I'll see you all in the next video.
What a lovely day!